Does that mean then that you would actually come to a film premiere if somebody had made a low-budget independent film that is quite interesting to you, and you get an invite to the premiere? Would you go?
Possibly. I don't like going to cast and crew screenings. As this is a personal position, I've had this discussion with a friend of mine, Chris Tilley from IGN. Now, Chris is a very nice guy, nicer than me probably, and he has tended to get quite close to some of the filmmakers that he's written about. And I said to him at one point, Chris, you know, it's very nice to get close to somebody like Edgar Wright, who's going to make films like, you know, Shaun of the Dead, and then go on to make this new film, this film Paul, which is a kind of an alien comedy film. But I think you need to keep a certain amount of distance between you and the filmmakers. Yes, you want to support them, but your job as a critic is to remain at one remove. If you're in somebody's pocket and they're expecting you to give the film a good review just because you know them, you're in a very difficult situation. And if you're at a cast and crew screening, it's almost like you're part of the gang. I'm not part of the gang. I didn't help make the film. I didn't do any of the good things that make the film good and strong, and I didn't do any of the bad things that made the film maybe not quite work. So my job is to stand back at slightly at one remove. That's not to say that I'm not passionate about it, or that if a film I think has a very strong idea but perhaps didn't have the money or the technical resources to fulfill that idea, or maybe the script didn't quite work in certain areas, I've got to say that, because I've got another responsibility, which is not just to the filmmakers. I'm not there to make them look good. My other responsibility is to the readers of TimeOut. They've been reading my horror movie reviews for 15, 20 years. They've come to trust my point of view. They might think I'm an idiot, but that still means that they can read my reviews and say, oh, we like that, in which case I'm not going to see it because he always likes rubbish, or he never likes mainstream films which are, you know, remakes of Friday the 13th or Halloween or whatever. They're going to have a perspective. If you have a degree of consistency and you maintain that certain distance between you and the filmmakers, I think both sides will trust you.
So do you think it's fair to say that the best place for you to experience a film is at maybe at a festival?
Festival screenings are good, but again, they're quite odd. You know, often if I see a film at Fright Fest with a hardcore audience, I will go and see it again in a kind of screening room, or perhaps at a cinema that's not full of hardcore horror fans, just to see what the reaction is. Now, for example, I saw both I Spit on Your Grave, the remake, and Monsters at Fright Fest. And both of those films I went to see again away from the festival, because I thought it was important to kind of see them with a degree of distance. When you're caught up in that festival atmosphere, especially horror fans, because they are both the harshest and the most enthusiastic fans you can get, you can get slightly carried away with the idea that you're seeing it with that many people in the Empire Cinema in Leicester Square, 2,000 people, Saturday night, this, that and the other. Fortunately, in the case of Monsters, the film held up, and I thought it was terrific, and I enjoyed it even more the second time I saw it, and I enjoyed it even more the third time I saw it when I did a Q&A with Gareth Edwards. And but in the case of I Spit on Your Grave, when I saw it away from the kind of horror film kind of atmosphere, the things that were wrong with it were more apparent to me.
Right. So, you know, often critics are accused of, you know, being able to destroy a film or make a film, and I'm not sure I really buy that, because, you know, audiences, you help inform a choice. But do you think it's fair to say, especially with smaller films, that having someone like yourself or Mark Kermode or any of the other, certainly from my perspective, respected critics behind a film, that can really, really help?
I think it does. I mean, you know, certainly if it's a small film, it's very hard these days. I mean, you know, when I first came to London back in the 80s, there would be maybe 4 films coming out a week. And maybe like a mainstream film, there'd be an art house film, there'd maybe be some kind of sex comedy, and there'd be one other movie, maybe a sort of lower string commercial mainstream picture. Now, there are something like 10 or 12 movies coming out every week. And if it's a film like Urban Ghost Story and you're trying to get some kind of, you know, profile for that picture, it's much harder, because you know if Peter Bradshaw or somebody is doing a column in The Guardian, he's going to do the big film of the week, which might be, let's say, True Grit, and then he's going to do, you know, a big art house picture, and he's going to give them a lot of room, and by the time he gets down to Urban Ghost Story, he's going to have maybe a small paragraph, maybe 150 words at most, and he's not a genre guy either, so his opinions frankly don't count for much anyway, but his opinion on genre films is not a specialist opinion. On the other hand, if Mark does on his Radio 5 show something about a film like Monsters and says this is really good, and we did have Gareth Edwards in to do an interview on the Radio 5 show the week I was looking after it for Mark, then I think it does give it a profile, and if people trust those critics, then yeah, definitely it's going to help.